Welcome into BroStorm Sports. It's Monday, October 10th. The Chiefs just got done beating the Raiders, and I'm your host, Sasha Bushka. I'm joined by my brother, Scott Bushka, who's probably going to say he's super passionate about something at some point in the episode, and I'll be making fun of him on the inside, but we'll keep that to ourselves. We're also joined by Intern P. He beat Scott in no less than 10 beer pong games over the weekend. How we doing today, fellas?
What's up, fellas? I'm doing pretty amazing. Chiefs just beat the Raiders in what was an amazing Sunday night game, aside from the terrible officiating, which is a theme we'll get into today, I think. And I spent as you guys know, because I was with you, I spent the weekend back in Wichita for, I don't want to date myself too much, but for my 20th high school reunion. Shout out to BCCHS, class of 2002. And other than that, spent all weekend whooping Intern P's ass in beer pong, which is pretty sweet.
So you've already said something that's contradictory. Excuse me. A few Crown and Cokes tonight. Contradictory to the intro. Intern P, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, as you saw, Sasha, I did probably win 9 out of 10 games. I think you got me on 1, but other than that, I'll give you the 1. It's fine with me, if that's what you want to say.
But how did your bets do?
I mean, I had the Raiders tonight.
We'll get to that.
I had the Raiders tonight.
We'll get into that a little bit on our best bets segment. But obviously, I referenced it in the intro, but the Chiefs get a win tonight, 30-29 over the Raiders, and it's not without controversy. Obviously, there was a play at the end of the first half. Chris Jones sacks Derek Carr. He forces a fumble, which obviously makes it like a live loose ball anyways. And he also tries to levitate over him like they want you to, and they call roughing the passer anyways. The Raiders end up with a field goal instead of the Chiefs getting the ball going the other way. The Chiefs kind of salvaged the situation by getting a field goal before halftime anyways, but not a good look for the NFL, especially on the heels of the Tom Brady situation on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, that was, and based on my math, which is generally pretty solid, although after this weekend it may not be, that was, I would say, at least a 10-point swing. If the Chiefs had lost the game as a Chiefs fan, I would have been furious. But it fed into to what you said, is it was a broader theme around the NFL, which is just, I would say, player safety going to the extreme, which I feel like, I mean, this is something that's been brewing for, to be honest, years in the NFL. But I feel like obviously the Tua concussion situation, which has now led to the Tua rule in the NFL, which we've seen put into effect, which is a good thing, I think is now affecting the way that NFL referees are calling other things on the field, particularly protecting the quarterback and roughing the passer. And it's getting to the point where defensive linemen can't pressure the quarterback. I mean, that play was ridiculous. Chris Jones had the ball and just basically fell down on top of Derek Carr and got called for roughing the passer. The Grady Jarrett one was maybe slightly better, but also equally as bad. And these are affecting the way games play out. So it was, I had 3 kind of big themes for the weekend in the NFL, and actually none of them involved anything that happened. Well, they involved things that happened on the field, but none of them involved who won and lost. And this was one of them, which is just the NFL's got to get how they're officiating roughing the passer under control, because it's becoming a, basically like a laughing joke on Twitter, NFL Twitter and elsewhere where people follow the NFL. Yeah,
I mean, the NFL probably doesn't hate it that much because it keeps people talking about their league throughout the week, even when games aren't going on. But I was sitting there watching the Chiefs game with a friend. And, I mean, if that Derek Carr play happens right at the end of the game, like the Tom Brady one did, it's a whole nother conversation that people are up in arms about, because you saw in Arrowhead they booed for damn near 2 more quarters anyways, and we're chanting refs you suck and bullshit and all that. But the larger conversation is, or what my friend said is, should we review roughing the passer? Like, should it be a reviewable play?
Dude, I don't know why. I have no idea why you wouldn't. And I was thinking the same thing right after that play, is like, I don't know why roughing the passer wouldn't immediately cue send it to New York and let them review it and they can overturn a shitty call. When,
Look at
you
it.
know,
Well, it's funny because later in the game, there was a play where I think it was Marquez Valdez-Scantling caught a ball. He rolled on the ground, and then he got back up and ran for like 4 or 5 more yards. And they originally marked it as a first down, and then they just called in and were like, he got touched while he was on the ground. We're moving it back 5 yards. Nobody challenged. Nothing happened. So if you can do that on that play, why can't you do that on any play, particularly roughing the passer?
yeah, I was trying to look up the name of the crew. Oh, I think it's Carl Sheffers. Like that crew is just generally terrible, and that guy as a referee is a joke. That it was bad. I mean, it was bad all the way around tonight in the Chiefs game. Right? You had the holding call on the field goal. You had a clear hold on Chris Jones at the start of that last drive, which they just blatantly didn't call.
Right.
I mean, thank goodness they got that Devontae Adams call right at the end of the game. So the officiating was just bad. But back to where we started with the point, like the league, it seems like an easy solve for the league to just be able to review this and change it if it's like the play that happened tonight with Chris Jones.
Yeah, it would seem easy, but sometimes simple things don't always get implemented right away, and it's something that the rules committee will probably look at.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, maybe they will. I don't think the NFL can wait till the end of the season.
Yeah,
because it's getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I know you took extensive notes in preparation for this, Scott. So, what was your second biggest takeaway on the NFL weekend?
I had 3 takeaways this weekend from the NFL, and like I said, I was pretty fired up to be able to watch some of the games live with you guys. One of the 3 was that comment just around the player safety, roughing the passing penalties. The other 2 were commentaries around trends I'm seeing in the game, which I think are super interesting and quite honestly, like leading to a bunch of weird results that we're seeing on the field. And the first one is just the running revolution. Running is back in the NFL. Like too high shell, and quite honestly, the way that people played the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes last year has completely changed how you win in the NFL. I think I'm gonna call it I would just say the Patrick Mahomes effect, but I think it's the Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen effect. People started playing too high shell against the Chiefs last year. It completely flustered Andy Reid, one of the greatest offensive play callers of all time, and Patrick Mahomes, who's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, for essentially half a season. You start this year, and everyone is playing that defense. And so let me read. I'm going to read some of these numbers off to you. Austin Eckler ran for 163 yards in the Browns-Chargers game. Nick Chubb in the same game ran for 134 yards. Taysom Hill, who's I guess technically a tight end, ran for 110 yards. Jeff Wilson for the Niners ran for 120 yards. Cowboys and the Rams, Pollard ran for 86. Elliott ran for 78. Josh Jacobs ran for 154 tonight, which they didn't win, but that's essentially the reason that they came pretty damn close to winning. And this is where you're going to make fun of me, but through 5 weeks of 2020,
super passionate about too high shells.
I'm not super passionate about too high shells. I'll get to something I'm passionate about later, but through 5 weeks of 2022, I know it's small sample size. There's 11 teams averaging 5 yards a rush, 5 yards per rush. And there's 11 teams averaging over 130 rushing yards per game. Right. So 11 teams over 5 rushing yards per attempt and 11 teams over 130 rushing yards per game. In 2021, there was 3 teams that averaged over 5 yards per rush. So 3 versus 11, and 5 teams over 130 rushing yards per game versus 11. And in 2020, same thing, 3 teams that averaged 5 yards per rush. And so teams are rushing the ball at a higher rate than we've seen in a lot of years. And at a much more successful clip than we've seen in a lot of years. And it's leading this is why the Giants beat the Packers. This is why the Cowboys are 4-1 without Dak Prescott. I could go down the list. This is why the Falcons were close against the Bucks before a bullshit call at the end of the game. The Patriots beat the Lions 29-0 with Bailey Zappi playing quarterback, completing like 100 yards. Like there's all this wonky stuff happening in these. Oh, sorry. I forgot about this. This is why the Texans beat the Jaguars, right? Because Pierce is it Damian Pierce?
Yeah,
Damian Pierce. Yeah,
Damian Pierce ran for 99 yards against the Jaguars and essentially controlled that game. So I just think it's finally a year where defenses are fighting back, and if you want to win, you have to run the ball.
It's interesting because kind of the narrative after the first couple of weeks of the season is that just from a fantasy perspective, because we all play fantasy football and a lot of our listeners do too, was that all of the value in fantasy drafts came at the receiver position because no running backs were doing anything. But I think what you're saying about the too high shell and the way defenses are playing has caused teams to adjust. So they were playing that way the whole season, but teams were used to, hey, we just drop back and pass every single play. And so they weren't using the running backs the way they needed to. And now teams are starting to adjust, and it's the total rushing yards is interesting, but what's way more interesting is the yards per rush, because when they do run, it's easier to run. And I feel like teams like the Chiefs and maybe even the Bills too, they have a year head start on like knowing how to attack that kind of defense, especially the Chiefs, because everybody did to Mahomes first. So it'll be interesting to see how these other offensive minds adjust, and whether or not teams are disciplined enough to stick with the run and win games that way.
Right. I mean, and this is also like last week we talked about all these, like 60% of games so far have gone under. This is why, because running slows down pace of play.
Runs the clock. You worry more about scoring on your possession and keeping the team away. Instead of how many points we can score, it's how many points can we score per possession, and there's less possessions in the game.
Exactly. So anyways, I was thinking about it while I was watching the games. We're getting all these results that people aren't expecting. And I think it's because there's almost like a fundamental shift in the league in terms of the way that teams are playing defense and the way that offenses are having to respond.
It's interesting because sometimes things don't happen as fast in football as you would expect. It's like teams have been passing the ball consistently and a lot and passing down the field for a long time. Like, who came up? I always said this about the Chiefs last year is like, nobody just invented the too high shell. Why all of a sudden can they not beat this defense? But teams were reluctant to play it because for the history of football, it was stop the run first, make teams pass on you. And then Patrick Mahomes comes along and he starts hitting 50-yard bombs, and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. You know, Tom Brady's been doing it for a long time, but he starts throwing the ball down the field a lot more. And it's interesting to see the cat and mouse game for sure.
By the way, I'm not sure we should spend a substantial amount of time on it, but Josh Allen has an absolute hose.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think about that, intern P?
Got a cannon.
I'm talking about his arm, intern P.
Oh, yeah. That's true. I'm glad.
Good point. You got to clarify with the
I'm
interns.
glad you clarified that. Sometimes I get a little lost out here sometimes. But dude, that Gabe Davis, he had 2 bombs. What was it, 98 yards or something? Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I just think it's a Josh Allen effect, just like you said, the Patrick Mahomes effect. Like it's
a
real
Scott,
thing.
Let's get one more takeaway and get out of this segment. And I think your last takeaway might be something I've been thinking about too. We'll see.
Yeah, so second takeaway is just the football analytics revolution leading coaches to do like some of the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
This is why we were raised in the same household, or maybe we were raised in the same household is why I knew that's what you were going to say.
You knew what I was going to say?
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote this morning before the game was played tonight, and I thought it was stupid for Andy Reid to go for 2 after when we went up by 7, because I knew if we missed that and Las Vegas came down and scored, they were going to go for 2, which thank goodness they didn't score. But and then I thought it was stupid for the Raiders to go. I mean, well, I thought it was less stupid because they're in Kansas City, they're trying to win the game. But you've got two decisions again, like go for two versus taking the point when you could have tied, right? Or you could have gone up 8. But the couple decisions I had written down, Brandon Staley, who's a habitual dumbass offender in this category, went for it on 4th and 2 on his own 48-yard line with under 2 minutes left, didn't get it, gave the ball back to the Browns, and they should have lost the game. The Cleveland kicker missed a field goal. That doesn't change the fact that it was a really stupid decision. And Nat Hackett, I don't think he deserves to be called Nathaniel anymore. Nat Hackett, Denver Broncos coach for now, goes for it on 4th down twice once at the end of regulation, once at the end of overtime. Instead of kicking easy field goals like with inside the 20-yard line, when the Colts literally, like, there was zero chance the Colts were scoring a touchdown anywhere in that game. The game was 12-9. No one came close to scoring a touchdown all night. If Hackett could have kicked a field goal towards the end of regulation, and you would have asked Matt Ryan, who I think at this point intern P throws better than Matt Ryan, you would have had to ask Matt Ryan to go 80 yards in under 2 minutes. It never would have happened. Instead, he goes for it. They don't get it. Indy kicks the field goal and ties, and it wins in overtime. And then the last one, John Harbaugh. This actually ended up going in his favor. I don't analytically, all of the analytics people would say it was actually the wrong decision, right? But he does not go for it on 4th and inches late in that game, kicks a field goal, which actually allowed them to win the game because they ended up going up 6, which made the Bengals go down for a touchdown. But they have Justin Kicker, the best kicker in the business, who went down and scored after the fact. So he actually went against the analytics and it worked out. Not saying that was the right decision or the wrong decision. I just think like analytics should be an input, not the only input. And you like the context of the game has to mean something. And I feel like all of these young hotshot coaches have lost a little bit of that thinking.
Yeah. I think you meant Nat can't hack it, first of all, if we're changing his name to Nat. But I think all of those decisions are well documented. And I'm not going to
steal that from someone too.
I don't steal. I think all of those decisions are well documented. I'm not going to pick apart each one, but I will talk a little bit about Andy Reid going for 2 at the end of the Chiefs game. I think that was influenced quite a bit because Andy Reid is not an analytics guy. He's old school. He makes decisions based on the game, and he usually is pretty conservative, actually, and analytics tends to skew more aggressive. But the kicker had literally just missed a field goal on that drive that got changed by a penalty that gave the Chiefs a first down. And on his last extra point, he doinked it off the upright. So I think Andy Reid's thought process is there's probably only like a 75% chance he makes this extra point anyways. And if we make this 2-point conversion, we're up 9 points, 2 possessions, and we close out the game right here. And if you miss it, if you miss it, you're up 7 points. And theoretically, if the Raiders score a touchdown, they're just going to kick an extra point and tie you. If you're up 8, they could score a touchdown and make the 2-point conversion and tie you. So it's just a matter of, like, do you trust your offense or defense more? In that case, for the Chiefs, it's usually the answer is the offense. When you couple that with the fact that he has no trust in his kicking game right now because Harrison Butker has the longest ankle sprain of all time, I think that's why Andy Reid made that decision.
Yeah, that's fair. I just think the whole analytics revolution is leading to some wonky decision making, and particularly in football, the context of what's happened for the previous 59 minutes I think is really important.
Very wonky for sure. And I mean, the term analytics is perfect to have to frame this conversation because these decisions are analyzed so hard after the games that I think a lot of these coaches are in their own head. It's like, can I win the post-game press conference versus can I win the game? Can I justify this decision somehow to people in the media? not whether or not what gives me the best chance to win the game.
Yeah. Can I give a couple other, just like really, because we didn't actually hit on like anything that teams did. Can I give just a couple other quick, like very quick hitters?
Yeah.
NFC East. Eagles 5-0, Cowboys 4-1, Giants 4-1, all attributable to what we talked about earlier, which is too high shell. They're all teams that are good in the trenches and can run the ball, so that's impressive. The Bills are still really good. Like Josh Allen's ridiculous. Also, the Steelers are terrible. I think the Dolphins are in trouble. I think Trevor Lawrence was flustered he must have listened to the BroStorm Sports Pod last week and was somewhat flustered by all the hand size talk. I know he has 10-inch hands, but I don't know. He seems highly erratic. Jacoby Brissett and Carson Wentz, that's all I'm going to say. And then Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray are an unmitigated disaster late in games. Like that, we watched that game together, but like him sliding down before the first down line, spiking on third down, having to kick a fourth down field goal with a kicker that everyone knew was going to miss was like just a joke. So those are my other like quick hit takeaways.
That's perfect. And to be clear, Matt Amendola has officially lost games for 2 different NFL teams this year. So we'll end our NFL takeaways on that.
Has he lost his job yet?
Dude, if he's still on the Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury needs the trigger that Andy Reid has. Andy Reid's not going to put up with that stuff that long. Or Brett Veach, I guess, more aptly. Chiefs GM got rid of Amendola before he could hit the team plane.
We should see if he wants to intern for BroStorm Sports.
I mean,
not to.
Are you suggesting that Matt Amendola can do a better job than intern B?
We'll have a beer
better.
You know what? We got time. I'll let you respond to that, intern P.
No, I'm just saying I probably could kick a little bit better than Amendola anyways. But yeah, the beer pong, tough look on Scott this weekend. He was talking all this crap and didn't really perform.
All right. So the wrap on this segment is intern P and Matt Amendola are just going to switch jobs because they'd both be better at the others. And that's going to do it for NFL takeaways. On the other side of the break, we're going to give the early leader in the BroStorm Sports favorite segment category. We're going to talk about our best bets, go over last week's stuff, talk about this week's stuff. Stay with us. You're listening to BroStorm Sports, anywhere podcasts are found. In the first segment, we gave some NFL takeaways, talked a little bit about the Chiefs game. Now we're going to get into the fan favorite section, best bets. Scott, did any of us get any bets right last week?
Before we get to bets, did we between last week and this week, did we get any sponsors for our sponsor break?
I feel like Fonzie, who sponsored the BroStorm segment last week, may have sent us money for a computer charger. So seems like a little bit of a sponsor.
Okay, excellent. I'm now going to consistently drink Boulevard Wheat on the podcast in hopes that they can be our first sponsor. Formal sponsor. I don't want to disparage Fonzie.
BroStorming with Boulevard.
There
I feel
you
like
go.
there could be a tagline come up with out of that.
All right. Results this week. I'm gonna give a little. I'll give a little update, then we can talk about the actual picks. Sasha, you were 0-2 this week. You were 2-0 last week, so you're 2-2 on the officially for the year. I was 1-1 this week. I was 0-2 last week, so that makes me 1-3. So I'm clawing back. And intern P has technically never won a bet on air. He was 0-1 the first week. He was a very miserable 0-2 with nothing even coming close this week. I am, and since you're the boss, Sasha, you can choose to dispute this, but I am going to make an executive decision. And since intern P didn't make a second pick the first week, I'm going to give him one win for his success in beer pong, which I was kidding. He did actually win a lot of beer pong games this weekend. So we're going to call intern P 1-1 for week 1 He was 0-2 last week, so he is also 1-3. So we're standing at Sasha 2-2, Scott 1-3, intern P 1-3.
I can agree to that, but I would say I wouldn't give your age out, but you kind of gave it up earlier anyways. Being that you're 38 years old, I feel like the spread on those beer pong games was at least -5 in favor of Pearson, and he didn't cover in most of the games.
He did not. I don't think he covered. The spread should have been large.
Yeah, but it's fair. We'll give him some credit for his beer pong success. 1-3 for intern P, 1-3 for Scott, 2-2 for me. And I want to get this fired up fast on the best bet segment today. So we're going to start with intern P today.
Okay,
you got any picks for us?
Sorry, Sasha. Can we? I just want to quickly for the listening audience because they're making decisions on whether or not to fade. All three of us. Everyone faded me after week 1. So Sasha, you picked the Dolphins to cover against the Jets, which I believe they lost covering 3. I think they lost 40-17.
Yeah.
And then
so almost.
It was close. And what was your second pick?
I had the Fighting Dan Campbells again.
Yeah.
No. That's a.
No, you had the Lions to cover 3 against the Patriots. They lost 29-0 to Bailey Zappi. So neither of those were particularly close. So that's not good. I had Cleveland to cover 3 points against San Diego, which they did. They lost by 2, if I'm not mistaken. My hypothesis on the game was right, which is that they were going to run the ball down San Diego's throat. Unfortunately, they did. Jacoby Brissett's their quarterback, and he did a lot of dumb stuff at the end of the game. My second pick was the Eagles to cover 5 against Arizona, and they won by 3. So didn't hit that. But the general hypothesis was correct. Intern P picked the Steelers to cover 14 against the Bills. They did not. They did not even come close to doing that. I'm sorry, Intern P. And then your second pick was the over on the Jaguars-Texans game. I don't even know where it was, probably somewhere in the 40s or 50s. There was a total of 19 points in that game. So you did not do very well this week.
Pretty close, if you ask me.
I'm going to modify a line from the Mighty Ducks that P&I's motto is, it's not worth losing if you can't lose big. You would rather lose the bet by 25
Mighty
points.
Ducks reference for the millennials that are listening to the podcast.
For the millennials.
He has no idea what that show is.
I do. I have seen the Mighty Ducks at least twice.
Intern P knows Gordon Bombay.
Mm-hmm. And
he's also learning how to talk into his mic.
Who was the kid? Who was the one dude?
Oh, Cake Eater.
The guy, I don't know. It's the guy from Dawson Creek. That's all I know.
Banks, yeah, Banks. He was wrong. He was so good at hockey, dude. Oh my god.
You know what? Come winter,
talking to that mic,
we might pick some hockey games.
We know nothing about hockey, and you know that.
So just for the listening audience who's not viewing, P has like an unwarranted fear that some kind of sound is going to be picked up in his mic while it's sitting in front of him, so he keeps it like above his head and then like perks up in his seat to talk into it when it's time for him to talk. It's a really interesting tactic. But I mean, on that note,
we're going to post this on YouTube this week, right? So
yes, we are.
They can see intern T reaching his head, intern P reaching his head outside of the viewing picture to talking to his mic.
Yeah, for the viewing public, they will understand. Just describing it for the listeners. Intern P, what are your picks this week?
Is this sound better? Is this better, or do I need to get closer?
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
Really
close. Okay,
I'm gonna write it down. I'm keeping score.
Okay, I have Minnesota -3 at Miami if there's no Tua. That's the big deal. It seems like a pretty small line if you got Skylar Thompson out there. Minnesota looked pretty okay last week.
They're not letting Tua play in that game.
Okay. Don't disparage Skylar Thompson for the second week in a row on this pod. But go ahead.
Shout out to friend of the program, Brandon Lang. Very upset that we were disparaging Skylar Thompson last week. And then Skylar Thompson promptly got into the game and promptly proved why we were disparaging him.
All right, so for my second pick, I'm actually going to fade myself on this one. So I had Cincinnati plus 1.5. No, minus 1.5 against the Saints. And then I think to myself, why is it that low? The Bengals should kill the Saints. So that way, I'm going the opposite. I'm going Saints plus 1.5 against the Bengals.
I mean, I like the idea of fading yourself.
Yes, I'm not a square better.
But
that's what they get you.
Now, for the listening audience, do they fade your original pick or fade the fade of yourself? It's going to make
for the
it
listeners
a little difficult.
For the listeners to decide.
All I know is another strong reasoning behind the bet for intern P.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to go against the grain there. I mean, I don't know what to say.
Just go.
I mean, the Saints were
gut.
a part of that infamous Lunder bet that you failed miserably on, so keep the train rolling.
Such a
The
good
Lunder
name,
down
though.
under.
The Lunder? Are you
Intern
kidding
P,
me?
ladies and gentlemen?
Scott, I'm going to go last. What do you got?
You want me to go here? Okay. I'm deciding between 3 picks, but I'm just going to go with these two. The first is Ravens at Giants. Ravens just beat Cincinnati by 1 or 2 at home. The Ravens are favored by 5.5 at home against the Giants. I still don't think people are valuing what the Giants are doing. I don't think the Giants are probably as good as their 4-1 record, but the Giants' defensive coordinator is Wink Martindale. He's the longtime coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens. He knows what the Ravens want to do on offense. He blitzes a ton, and Lamar Jackson has traditionally how you fluster Lamar Jackson is you blitz him. That's what teams did against him last year. He has admittedly been a lot better against the blitz this year. But I'm just betting on Martindale being able to fluster him enough and the Giants being able to run on the Ravens defense enough to cover 5.5 at home. So I'm taking the Giants plus 5.5.
That's fair.
Why are you guys laughing at me?
I'm laughing because Pearson just blew into his mic and then looked at himself like, oh, I can't believe that made noise.
Dude,
what's your second
it's an
pick,
expensive
Scott?
mic. It's gonna work if you talk into it.
I thought I needed it.
All right, my second pick. My second pick is in a similar vein. Actually, same division-ish. I mentioned the NFC East. So Cowboys at Eagles. Eagles are favored by 5.5. Eagles just beat the bumbling Cliff Kingsbury's by 3. Last year, the Cowboys beat the Eagles 41-21, 51-26 in 2 games. I don't claim to believe that the games are going to be that lopsided. I think Philly's closed the gap. I just don't know that they've closed the gap that much. And Philly's offensive line is pretty banged up, and Dallas has got probably the second best defensive line behind San Francisco in the league. So I think the Cowboys' defensive line does some damage against a banged up Philly O-line. And I just think this is a close game, divisional rivalry. It's probably a 3-point game. I got the Cowboys covering 5.5 against the Eagles.
So I can get behind that, provided that Dak Prescott doesn't play.
I agree.
So,
I don't think Jerry Jones is going to let Dak Prescott play.
Do we get to a point though, like if Cooper Rush is the presumed starter and the line's one thing, and then the Cowboys announce Dak Prescott is playing, and the line goes more in favor of the Eagles, does that say something about that decision? Because I feel like at this point, the way the Cowboys have played the last 4 weeks and the way they looked week 1, Vegas would at the very least not move the line if they knew Dak was playing, and if anything, might make it bigger.
Yeah, I think it's less of a commentary on Dak Prescott than it is on the Cowboys coaching staff. Because why am I blanking on what's the backup quarterback's name?
Cooper Rush.
Yeah. So Cooper Rush threw for 100 yards last week, right? And the Cowboys won 22-10. Their defense scored 10 points. And it's because Kellen Moore is calling the game completely differently. If he calls that same game plan against Dak Prescott, the outcome or with Dak Prescott, the outcome's going to be the same. I think people just worry that they're going to start to get cute. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's a fair question. It's probably a larger conversation for a larger day. I'm going to give you guys some picks. Pats are +3 at the Browns. Now, Bailey Zappi and the Pats are prescribing to Scott's, I don't think prescribing is the right word, subscribing to Scott's theory of running the ball.
Like we need people to subscribe to this podcast.
Yeah, subscription-based model. And the Browns still have Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback. He's thrown an interception late in games like 3 different times. So if you're telling me the Browns have to win outright and win by more than 3 for them to win the bet, and I can actually get points against the Browns, I'm going to take that. So I'll go Patriots +3 at the Browns. And I'm going to take the other side. So you can choose who to fade here. You can make the bet based on your own opinion. But the Saints, last I checked, are still starting Andy Dalton. Even if they're not, they're starting Jameis Winston. They just beat the Seahawks, but it was like an incredibly close game, incredibly back and forth. The vaunted Saints defense gave up 32 points to Geno Smith, who coincidentally, I guess, is good now. But the Bengals are 2-3 now, I believe. And they're not going to want to fall too far out of this playoff race. Just lost a close one to the Ravens. So I will take the Bengals -1.5, regardless of what some people may call a trap line at the Saints. So Bengals -1.5. Any thoughts, Intern P?
Now who we fading here? I'm confused. I'm really confused now. If we weren't before.
Yeah, it's going to be a complicated fading situation for the listening public.
I mean,
what are your thoughts, Scott?
I'm just gonna go ahead and put my chips behind Sasha's pick. So
see, you guys are squares. That's where they get you.
I don't know what that means, but we'll see next week. I love two of you guys taking opposite sides of the bet.
Awesome. So what we learned in best bets this week is none of us are that good at this. Intern P thinks Scott and I are squares, and what we also learned over the course of the week, we bro-sourced a little bit. Our female listening public wants to hear a little bit more news that's more sports adjacent outside the NFL. Basically, they want us to talk about Tom Brady and Giselle. So on the other side of the break, we're going to get into some sports adjacent news. Stay with us. I'm here with Scott Bushka and Intern P. I'm Sasha Bushka. We're ready to get into some sports adjacent stuff, but before we do that, we were talking in the break, and Intern P wants to explain to everyone what a square is. He feels like Scott and I are such squares that we may not actually know.
Well, that's a fair assessment.
I mean,
it's basically just going against going with the public, like not thinking, like just being like, oh, Bengals, they're good, they're better than the Saints. But you got to think, like, why is it that low? I don't understand. I still don't get it. Sometimes I just recognize square lines.
Just got to get inside the minds of the odds makers, is what you're saying, to not be a square.
Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying.
I mean, Intern P did provide a detailed analysis behind why he thought the Saints were going to cover that 1.5 points. So I trust him.
That's fair. What's not to trust?
Although now, I will say that Intern P said that the Dolphins +3 against the Jets last week was a trap line. And then look what happened.
That.
I mean, I recognize a trap line when I see them, but they always trap me.
So
I'm like a mouse who loves cheese.
+1 to Intern
I
P.
know there's a mouse trap there, but I'm going to eat the cheese. All right.
Good analogy.
On to the next thing. Scott was vigorously taking notes in the break, so I assume he's going to have some good insights on this stuff. Tom Brady and Giselle Bündchen hired divorce lawyers last week, which is I was going to say exciting, but that might be the wrong term for it. It's exciting if you're an eligible bachelorette or bachelor that lives in the Tampa area, I guess. But is this anything, Scott?
Yeah, I have two takeaways. I don't know if the listening public is going to agree or not, but one is like it's interesting to me how everything that's playing out with Brady's personal life is affecting the Buccaneers and the way their season's going so far. Yeah, because it was like it's been a very public. He retired. Looking back on it now, everything makes total sense, right? Like the guy retires. He probably retired because Giselle told him, "You have to retire and come spend time with our family." 45 days later, he's like, "I don't want to do this. I still want to play football." He goes back. Then he has a very public 11-day hiatus during training camp. I don't know if I just heard this last week, but he takes off every Wednesday of the like the game week, which to me seems like a pretty big deal. So, and it's clearly affecting his performance, and I would say just like overall team chemistry. So I'm sure it is very sad that the two of them it looks like they're getting divorced. But in the context of what we do, which is talk about sports, I think it's somewhat sad that their relationship seems to be playing out in public, even though they've done everything they possibly could to not have it play out in public. That's point one. Point two is that Antonio Brown is A, crazy, B, the worst. Like, he has to be the worst teammate or ex-teammate that ever existed.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's trying to get on the team, but he's not doing himself any favors.
So, if you don't know what Scott's referencing there, Antonio Brown basically delivered a tweet. I don't know if that's the right term. He tweeted a tweet. The delivery method was Twitter. It said, "Daddy doesn't live here anymore," a book about divorce. And it was like a picture with a caricature of Tom Brady on the front, just basically making fun of the fact that Tom Brady's getting a divorce. And then there's a picture of a lady and a daughter watching Tom Brady walk away, and he's got eye black on. It's a whole thing. Antonio Brown is a nut job, so I don't think you really pay a lot of heed to what he feels about it. But to your larger point, that's exactly what you were talking about, which is this whole thing's playing out in the public eye, and it's got to be tough to be trying to have a football season, trying to do your thing on the field, and you're in the middle of a divorce, and people either feel bad for you and are talking about it, or they're essentially making fun of you, like in the case of Antonio Brown. To the larger point, it's puts another feather in the cap of Tom Brady probably loves football more than anybody ever has in the history of football. Sacrifice essentially. Yeah. He essentially sacrifices marriage to a supermodel who makes millions of dollars a year, and essentially every dude in America would want to be married to her just so he could play another 45-year-old
to his children. Don't forget that.
What's that?
I said also the mother to his children.
Yes, the mother to his children. Exactly. As the intro states, Scott probably just got done putting a bunch of kids to bed, so he knows what that's all about.
Any thoughts, Intern P?
I did not even know who she was except for Tom Brady, but she is very attractive, and I would very much be in her Twitter DMs if I could get in there.
It's actually, I mean, Twitter DMs is the only way to pick up chicks, as Intern
you
P
own
knows.
the social media account, so why don't you?
Follow our socials. Follow our socials at
BroStorm in the
BroStorm
DMs.
Sports.
Yeah,
At BroStorm Sports on Insta and Twitter.
Yep, before we get shut down by Giselle's lawyers. Follow him quick. It's interesting that P also said he didn't know who she was outside of being Tom Brady's wife. And I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat, but I guess that's just looking at the world through a sports lens and nothing else, and that's all we worry about, because by all accounts, she's maybe even more famous than Tom Brady.
Right.
To the general public. So,
Right.
There's our Tom Brady.
Where is she from? Do you know?
Obligatory Tom Brady section. We'll try to come back to it every week, ladies.
Yeah, exactly. We got to keep the female listeners involved, and I don't know if like talking about sliding into Giselle's DMs was the best way to do that, but at least we made an effort. The one other piece of news we wanted to get to on the sports news, but not necessarily on the field or on the court today was, and I don't remember exactly when this happened, but it's been since the last time we recorded. If not, we didn't talk about it last time, so don't worry about it. Draymond Green basically knocked the lights out of his teammate Jordan Poole during a Warriors practice, and now is taking some time away from the team.
You want reactions?
I would appreciate reactions, but if you don't have anything on it, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Draymond Green is only slightly less of a nut job than Antonio Brown. I mean, this was not good. And I don't know if people have seen the video, but this was not like, it was not a push or like a practice scuff. Like he cold cocked him in the face. After the two of them were talking trash in practice. So it's not great. I like the rest of the, people who follow the NBA world are struggling to see how the Warriors come back to this. I mean, all I keep thinking about is like, if you're the Warriors coaching staff and ownership and Steph Curry, it's like, can you imagine a worse thing to happen at the start of the year when you're trying to defend the title? And all you have to do is like keep team chemistry together. You got a bunch of good players. You got young stars, one of which is Jordan Poole. And Draymond Green goes and does this, and it basically like throws the team chemistry into disarray. So it's not great. Like I've seen a couple things, which is like, who do you extend, Draymond or Jordan Poole? Like if you ask me, that answer is easy. I know what Draymond does for them on the court. I know he is like a unique offensive player in terms of the way that he facilitates their offense around Steph Curry. But he's also an aging, power forward, but he's actually 6'7", and when he can't jump and move like he can when he was younger, to me the answer is simple: Jordan Poole. So I don't know where he goes from here, but it's not a good situation.
Yeah, one of the things I found interesting about the whole thing is like Steve Kerr's basically only comments about the thing is, why in the hell did the video get leaked? He's more worried about the investigation of how it got out. And essentially he said, I've, in my 30 plus years or whatever in the NBA, I've seen something like this probably 20 times, which I don't think is true because we don't see videos come out like this often. And it was an aggressive, like hard punch that could legitimately hurt someone bad. So it's interesting the tact he's taking on it. Obviously, they're making a little bit of a deal out of it because Draymond Green is currently taking time away from the team. And it's going to give some decisions to the Warriors moving forward that you alluded to there. And Draymond Green's usefulness in the NBA, to be frank, is probably coming towards its end, like maybe a year or two left. And so, and he probably wants a max deal or something. So I really can't see him being on the Warriors past this year. And the question is, can you salvage this year and make another run at a title?
Yeah, it's interesting. I tend to probably believe Steve Kerr's comments more than you. Like I don't like one interesting takeaway is, I think you even asked me this weekend, you're like, how did TMZ get that video? It's like I'm sure stuff like this has happened before in NBA practices. It just goes back to something we've talked about often, which is like athletes are living in the world of social media where like everything's on tape and if it's on tape, it's out to the public immediately for public consumption, which is like, we talk about this all the time. But if Michael Jordan would have gone through his career, like, in today's day and age versus in the late 80s, early 90s, like there probably would have been a lot of shit about what he was, out and about and doing. Quite frankly, like he probably hit a few people in practice.
It's actually known thing that he did punch Steve Kerr in a practice.
Yeah.
And
Which might skew Steve Kerr's view of the whole situation. Like, I got punched in the face by Michael Jordan, maybe more people should get punched in the face because I have a ton
Did
of time.
actually in April
Although
23,
Draymond Green is
2020.
not Michael Jordan, just for the record. I'm sure that
April
I'm sure
23rd,
that mentally
2020.
he thinks he is.
Pearson, what happened on April 23rd, 2020? You look like you
It
want
was
to
just no. I just didn't want to interrupt. It was just literally it says Michael Jordan punched me in the face, helped the relationship. Like that's just not a thing that actually happens.
And,
It's not a
and to be
thing.
clear, I take Steve Kerr at his word. I just question whether that should be the biggest point of the whole situation is whether or not the video got leaked. Like maybe he should take it a little bit more seriously. But
Yeah, I agree. I also this is probably like a non sequitur. Sorry for using that word, but I also just it makes me think about how I always think about how crazy it is that LeBron has essentially lived for 20 years in like the modern media era and nothing like this has ever come out about him, which I think probably says a lot about him and his character.
fair enough. Some LeBron love to end the pod. You guys got anything else? If you've listened this far, it means you liked something you heard. So hop on wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. Follow us on the socials. Thanks for giving us a chance. We'll see you next time.